And today we are going to talk about an exciting new fund offering in the mutual fund space, which is Silver Fund of Fund, or FOF in short. Recently, SEBI announced the regulatory framework for silver ETFs, and this has led to silver ETF uh, new fund offerings that are open for subscription currently. The launch of Silver Fund of Funds reminded me of the famous saying, born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Now, most of us, unfortunately, are not born with a silver spoon in our mouth, but many of us can surely invest in the Silver Fund of Funds. I will also quote the famous German philosopher and economist Karl Marx. He once said, although gold and silver are not by nature money, money is by nature gold and silver. To help us understand the advantages of silver mutual funds as a portfolio building block, we have today four stalwarts from the mutual fund industry with us. Welcome, gentlemen. I will briefly introduce our esteemed panelists, and then we will discuss the benefits of Silver Fund of Fund with them. So we have Mr. Shrikant Mathubai from Bangalore. He is the CEO of Sri Kavi Wealth, an eminent mutual fund distributor, and he has a rich experience of over 30 years in the mutual fund industry. He is also the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Don't Retire Rich, and he has a blog which is very famous with investors, very popular with investors, called Good Fund Advisor blogspot.in. He is also a rebalance volatility certified coach and is a contributor to important publications such as Morningstar, Advisor Coach, Economic Times, Business Line, Business Standard, to name a few. And he also appears regularly on the radio channel, Radio City, Bangalore. We also have with us Mr. Dhruv Ravani. Dhruv is the partner of Shriji FinServe LLP, which is an AMFI-registered mutual fund distributor. By qualification, he is a chartered accountant and a law graduate from Mumbai. He also successfully completed his CPA exams conducted by AICPA US. He is also a certified financial risk manager with GARP USA and has over 7 years of experience in advising clients in the field of taxation as well as financial planning. Dhruv has been an active equity investor for more than 12 years, and Shriji Investments has 900 clients and AUMs of more than 250 crores. From Delhi, we have Mr. Viksit Rohatgi. Mr. Rohatgi is the founder of Blue Circle Financial Services, a prominent Gurgaon-based MFD, managing AUMs of more than 400 crores across 500 clients in India as well as abroad. Viksit ji is a renowned personality designated as thought leader by the mutual funds industry. For the work done over past 25 years, he has been honored with numerous prestigious awards and recognition by the mutual fund industry. He has also been a part of some very prominent panel discussions in the industry as well as talk shows, and has authored some well appreciated articles in financial magazines as well as newspapers. For his expert comments and professional guidance, he has been a part of many investor education programs on various radio channels. And our fourth guest is Mr. Ram Shah, who is the CEO of FinEdge Services LLP. Mr. Shah is an alumni of IIM Kolkata and has a vast experience of 19 years across financial services industry and is well known in banking and financial services circles. He has a client base spread across India as well as overseas. He started his career with Standard Chartered Bank, then moved on to Reliance Life Insurance as a branch head. And his last assignment was with Tata AIG as a regional manager. In 2014, with the objective of providing investors the best investment options, he decided to quit his job and start his own distribution as well as advisory firm. His approach to business has always been centered towards clients first approach. Mr. Ram has been actively conducting various financial awareness sessions on a regular basis to fulfill the objective of spreading financial awareness across the society. So welcome, gentlemen. And we shall now begin the question and answer session. Thank you so much. So the first question is to Viksit ji. Viksit ji, one of the most important questions that comes from investors is, okay, why should we not invest in the physical metal and instead take the mutual fund route to investing in precious metals?
Thank you very much, Samir, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this esteemed panel. Also, I would like to thank Nippon Mutual Fund for coming out with this wonderful opportunity for investors to invest through Silver ETF, the new offering. It's a wonderful offering as for the investors. Precious metals like gold and silver should always be part of our portfolio as a diversification tool. Should not be looked upon just on for like a money making tool, but more pertinently towards a diversification tool. Especially so is what I have experienced is that most of the time the investments are in riskier assets or volatile assets like equities. And God forbid, in the unfortunate or unfriendly times when the going is tough, there is emergency requirement for the money. The investor has to liquidate such assets which are not doing well at that point in time, right? So these precious metals, which act as a hedge against these uncertain times, offers this opportunity for offering liquidity to the investor. Right? Moreover, over long periods of time, if we just look upon on the history, these precious metals, they have wonderfully worked as a hedge against inflation and currency volatility. I did a research on macro trends of gold and silver, especially on the silver side is, wherein as I try to find out is the performance of silver over last 22 years, right? Adjusted for the dollar prices, 2000 and year 2000, silver was quoting at $4.95. Recent closing as on 31st of December 2021, silver was quoting at $23.35. So if one works out a CAGR of last 22 years on silver, it's given a 7.20% CAGR, which has almost equal to inflation in India. Right? So it's a wonderful, metals are a wonderful tool to be a hedge against inflation over long term. Right? Now coming back is on the question for holding these metals in the physical form vis-a-vis holding them in a paper or electronic form. I would always advocate holding such metals in the investments in the paper form for the advantage of liquidity, right? When you hold these metals in the physical form, there are some shortcomings like as you require to have storage facilities. You need locker facilities. There is a question of risk of theft. Then there's a question of purity for such metals when you buy them physically. One may counter question is that purity ka to we can buy upon you can say franked hallmarked metals, but then is again for the hallmarking is it's again the cost involved, so your cost of investment goes high. Right? Then is it's on the other also what is very pertinent is when you are buying them in the physical form, it's the question of holding them in quantity. Generally this comes upon in a larger chunks, right? So the outflow has to be large. You have another counter question that for silver you can come up with coins which are in small denomination, but then as you are paying a price for buying those coins, right? So that making charges and all that is that is charge extra. Last but not the least of all is the question of liquidity. The problem for liquidity on the when you hold these assets in the physical form is that you may not find a suitable buyer, or when you find a buyer, that the liquidity discount can be huge, so you are losing out. Vis-a-vis, if you compare that in electronic or a paper form, it's the operation or the investment is very simple, right? There is not much of a outflow in terms of the ticket size, right? Then there is transparency on the pricing, you right. So all these stuff, and then there is more so is on the taxation part. It's very easily the tax liabilities can be easily calculated when you hold that in the paper form. Right. To sum up, I would say is that electronic or a paper form investment in precious metals would be just a win-win situation for the investors.
Thank you, Viksit-ji. I think that surely tells us that the electronic form, whichever way you look at it, is an efficient form of taking exposure to precious metals. So thank you for that. My next question is to Dhruv. Dhruv, can you throw some light on the correlation between silver, gold, and equities? Are silver prices more volatile than gold, especially because silver and gold are thought to be more like cousins? So can you shed some light on this?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to Nippon and to Samir. So I understand the question is the correlation between silver, gold, and equities. Just like gold, the silver being a precious metal, it has a indirect inverse correlation with equities over the years, and it provides, just like Rastogi mentioned, it provides the inflationary hedge in your portfolio. And but unlike gold, silver also has a lot of industrial uses, which provides it a demand supply equation which adds up to the price volatility that comes into picture. So in times of inflationary environment, we can expect silver to outperform a little bit better than gold, and at the same time, at times of equity downturn, silver provides us a good downside hedge against equity. So there is a sort of an inverse correlation when it comes to equity and silver. However, between silver and gold, gold being a storage of value primarily, and it being held by foreign banks and the statutory reserves of governments, it has a lot more stability. But silver being also used in industries, there is a lot of demand supply equation out there, and in that case there is some price volatility out there.
Thanks, Dhruv. So clearly a negative correlation between silver and equities, which will, I think, help in the principle of asset allocation, which is so important to invest in. So thanks for that, Dhruv. So my next question is to Shrikantji. Shrikantji, what are the key traditional industrial uses of silver? We always think that we associate silver with ornaments, jewelry, and silverware. But what are the traditional industrial uses of silver?
Right. So thank you very much, Samirji. So the problem is people tend to think that silver is a purely for decorative. But when we look at the data, we find that it is used more in the industries. Nearly 35% is used in the industries. In fact, for industrial purpose, going ahead, it's assumed that it will be even 60%. Silver demand is more, 60% to be used by industries. And silver is used in electric vehicles, automobiles, and even in the photography, and of course medicines. So these are the traditional users used silver by the different asset classes. Now the point is, will this be the only thing? No, the thing that going ahead is that for 5G you need more of silver. For 5G towers, silver is a better conductor of electricity than copper, and that's why more and more silver usage is going to go up. So traditional usage is there definitely, but going ahead, new ways of using silver is going to come up, and I will be telling you more about this going forward.
So thank you, Shrikantji. Clearly, a lot of uses of silver in medical equipment, electronics, and so on and so forth. So Ram, that brings me to the question: what are the new age uses of silver? Because that is, I think, what is exciting people a lot. So can you throw some light on that part?
Thank you, Samir, and thank you, Nippon Mutual Fund, for giving us this opportunity. As Srikanth has rightly pointed out, I think this point has already been covered through Srikanth. Electric vehicles, 5G technology, mobile phones, solar panel, and other medical instruments. So lot many new issues of uh, silver is going to come up. And as India is trying to position itself as the manufacturing hub in the coming years. So I think in the coming near future, the demand for silver is going to go very much up. Like Srikanth has given the fact from 30% to 60% industrial use we can expect. And for normal way, we can see storing of physical gold, physical silver is very much difficult. And this is the first time when SEBI has given the approval through which we can we have been allowed to go for this ETF option. So now the demand for silver will definitely go high. So again, the consumption from the consumption point for the industrial use and other things, the price of silver will move higher side, and that will definitely going to give us the returns. Investors are going to get a good returns from silver fund.
Thanks, Ram. So clearly a lot of demand going forward for silver. So we can definitely say silver lining in the clouds. So we can say that. So that brings me to the next question, and this is to Dhruv, and this is a very important question. So knowing all the uses of silver, its demand is going to go up and so on and so forth. How should investors position a fund like this in their portfolio?
And that's a very valid question when we look at a client's portfolio. Now, traditionally till now, before SEBI gave us an approval, we had three asset classes primarily where we used to invest. So one was the equities, and within the equity space, there were various categories where investors used to invest. Similarly, in the debt, we had the government bonds and the credit opportunities out there, and there was gold. Usually clients portfolio had a lot, a mix of equity and debt, which used to be there based upon their risk allocations, and some bit of gold used to be used as a hedge at times against equity. However, silver provides a unique opportunity for clients' portfolios because the silver, as we discussed earlier also, that due to its inflationary characteristics, it can work in environments where with equity, and also in times when there are equity downturns. Since it has an inverse correlationship with equity, it can protect the portfolio returns in that case. So you combine with gold, it provides the opportunity for investors to increase their exposure to precious metals. And within precious metal space, given the stability that gold provides and given the inflationary characteristics of silver, it provides a unique combination for the investors. In the present scenario where debt returns are on a downhill, it provides a opportunity for investors to shift their allocations and towards silver in that case, and benefit from the rising opportunities which silver has in the industrial space, which can drive up the demand as well as their prices if the demand supply equations play out. So at one point of time, while the investors will benefit from the rise in their prices of silver, and in times when equity downturn is there, it will also be able to protect their portfolios from a swift drawdowns.
Thanks, Dhruv. So clearly a very important portfolio building block, whichever way we look at it. So this question is to you, Vixit ji. What is the minimum amount that an investor can start investing through the FOF route? Do we need large amounts, or small amounts will suffice to invest in this fund?
Well, Samir, to the delight of the investors, a fund of fund route just requires minimum investment of 100 rupees to start with, and then in multiples of rupee 1 going forward. Right, so it's a wonderful option. This could make investing into fund of funds, especially is precious metals. You can say is down to the smallest home size in the country, right? And that desire or lure for them to buy precious metals. Now that dream would get materialized with such kind of an offering. See, I've just through other panelists, we have all emphasized on the fact that demand for silver is going to grow, especially for various reasons. And most of us says because of the industrial use. See, I again did a small research and I found out that the World Silver Forum expects silver demand to rise 11% year on year from now on. See, now why is vis-a-vis gold demand to go up just by 8%? Right. So why is so? Why is it so that silver is going to outpace gold demand? The biggest thing with silver is that silver predominantly is not recyclable. Right? It's more of a consumable stuff. Right? See, when we talk of recycling means is we have to channelize the physical, we can make ornaments, we can remake the ornaments, right? But people would be surprised to know that it's only just 6% of silver which is used for jewelry or tableware, right? Rest 94% use of the silver is for industrial purposes, for coins and metals, right, for medicinal uses and other uses. So that recycling stuff is not happening with silver. So there is more and more demand coming upon, right? Now coming back is onto the investment options, where I say is only meager small size of 100 rupees is required. See, this could be a great option for investors to start investing through SIP modes in the fund of fund. See, like when I just talked upon on the point to point returns of the from the middle, about 7%. Now, but then is during that 22-year period, there have been phases wherein the metal prices have gone up, precious metals have gone up 15%, 18%, 20%. Right? So that meager ticket size of 100 rupees or 1000 rupees, whatever conveniently investors can do, so they can pile up the units, right? And which over a period of time act as a compounder to their investments, right? So that's the beauty of investing through fund of funds in precious metals.
Thank you, Viksit. So this is really great news. 100 rupees is probably less than the price of petrol.
Exactly.
So it's really great news for retail investors, especially that they can start their investments with very bigger amounts. So that's really great news. Which brings me, Shrikantji, to you. SIPs are the most popular method of investment. So is an SIP facility allowed into the silver fund of fund? And are there any loads applicable in the SIP structure?
So thankfully, good news to all the males there. So if your wife was asking for a big chunk of silver and you are problem adjusting the money, now you can do it through a monthly mode. Not even just a monthly mode, because it's a fund of fund and you can do it every day. Every day 100 rupees dal sakte ho. So the biggest advantage of silver funds that has come up is because it's a fund of fund and an ETF, you can do it monthly with SIP, weekly SIP. Jitna hi paisa hai, dal ke you can buy one big chunk later on. So this is the big advantage for you. And yeah, and the till now, if you wanted to invest in silver, you had to go for the futures and options, which was a big issue. Now, with your small money, small chunks of money, you can buy those big bars of silver, investing monthly, weekly, whichever way is convenient to you. And most importantly, you need to understand that the exit load, the taxation treatment is like a debt fund. So you don't have to worry on that. So earlier, if they said this one, the physical one, you have to pay huge taxes, and of course the quality of purity and all those things is there. But because of the taxation issue, it's very simple, easy way. Go and ask your CA, he will say that the best way to invest in silver is silver fund. So go for it. This is one of the best options. And yes, silver is SIP is available, and that's a great news for us, all of us.
So that is really great, Shrikantji, that a very flexible SIP facility is available for investments in the fund. So I'm sure investors will be able to take advantage of this SIP route.
Samit, if you allow me to come in, I would like to add to Shrikantji, see on the taxation part. See, we are lucky to be there in a country whereas we don't have wealth tax applicable now. Just few years back is wealth tax got abolished. Otherwise, wealth tax was very much prevalent in India. Now, globally, with what is happening is governments are starved for funds, so they would find out ways to tax. And wealth tax is one of the ways which is a easy money for the governments, right? So when you hold precious metals in the physical form, that is accountable as a wealth and is taxable under the wealth tax regime. However, if you own these assets in the paper electronic form, be it fund of funds or be it an ETF, so now these electronic form investments are exempted from wealth tax and will always remain exempted from wealth tax. So that's a very important aspect on taxation, which has to be noticed going forward.
So thank you, Viksit ji. This is a very important point that you have made. So investors should keep this tax angle in mind, especially when they are investing through the electronic form. So Dhruv, you want to elaborate on the taxation part? You want to explain to investors in a bit detail?
So, like the speakers mentioned earlier, the taxation will work just like your debt instrument, where if it is held for a 3-year period, it will be considered as a long-term capital gain, and there will be indexation benefits available for the FOF. And also, if it is considered for less than 3 years, then it will be considered as a short-term capital gain. So this way, in an inflationary scenario, the cost you benefit from a index cost which would be higher, and that way your capital gains which would be liable for tax reduces drastically, and you end up paying a substantially lower tax. This makes a very unique opportunity for investors to look into this, and also compared to paper gold, the prices and everything is very clear, crystal clear, and the documentation is very simple. So there are no proofs required in this, which makes it a much more easier accessible tool for investment into silver. So investors should look at it in that angle.
So Dhruv, what you say has a very important implication. I think purely from the taxation point of view, investors should stay put for at least 3 years, irrespective of which way silver goes.
Yes, okay. Because that way what happens is the gains that they make, they will reduce, because under the taxation laws, your cost price will increase for computing the gains. So say, for example, if today, you bought silver for 100 and after 3 years, you sold it up for 180, if the price hypothetically is 180, the cost for the computation of capital gains won't be 100, it will be a different amount as prescribed by the tax authorities, and say it would be say 120, 130. And so instead of 80 rupees of capital gain, you will have to pay tax only on the 60 or the 50 rupees of capital gains, which will be accrued to you as per the taxation laws. So you end up saving a substantial amount out there.
Yeah, sure, Dhruv. So thanks for that illustration. So Ram, I come to you. Now there are two, simultaneous new fund offerings going on in the market. One is the silver ETF or the exchange traded fund NFO, and one is the silver ETF fund of fund NFO. So, investors would probably want to know that which category of investors should put their money in the ETF and who should invest in the FOF. Can you help throw some light on this?
It's like for ETF investor who wants to invest in ETF, they need to have the demat account, and there are other things. But for fund of fund, an investor can invest so easily through a mutual fund route, and the investment is also rupees. Minimum investment is 100 rupees only, and they can go through SIP systematic investment plan also, so they can build up the asset base in the long term, so that they can plan their investment systematically. It gives lots of convenience if someone is going through fund of fund route, so that gives lots of convenience. They can plan their investments. Plus, you do not need to go through those demat account holding. If we have seen people, we say that demat account is required, some of you people feel reluctant to go for demat account and all. But to open, to invest through fund of fund, it's so very simple, and people are investing through mutual fund route. I think fund of fund route will be very much easier clients who do not have the idea to operate mutual through Demat account, because to go for ETF, they need to have some specialized knowledge, and some their workings has to be there to sell through Demat account, because if someone is buying ETF, they have to sell through Demat DP account only. But in case of fund of fund, we have got the lots of freedoms, so they can buy a small amount and invest frequently with SIP easily, and they can go ahead.
Thanks, Ram. So clearly, those investors who don't want the hassles of a Demat account and a broking account should invest through the FOF route.
Yes, Samir, if I can add,
yes,
if I
sure.
can add here, the another issue with ETF there is here, the problem is every time when you buy in the ETF and sell, there is a brokerage added. Okay, but in the FOF, that's not the case. So that's the advantage when it comes to FOF.
Right. Dhruv, you wanted to add anything?
One more point. In case of an ETF, we all know that the ETF space in India is not that mature. So there will be an impact cost that investors might face in certain environments like the COVID scenario and everything, where at the time of buying and selling, there can be impact cost. That in the case of an FOF, you do not have to worry because the AMC takes care of that. While the impact cost would be there, the AMC will strive to minimize that impact cost for an investor always.
So thank you, Dhruv. So that brings me to the.
Can I also add something there?
Yeah, Viksit-ji, please.
See, what happens is through FOF route is there is a constant inflow of money which is coming to the fund manager, right? And in the times of volatility, whereas the price of silver is moving or the metal is moving up or down, the fund manager is in a situation is to average out on the last purchase, right? So one advantage is the investor can do periodic purchases and he can average his cost. Then is to add to that even more is the fund manager is providing this facility, right? So these bits and pieces of savings over long periods would turn out to be huge compounders for the investors, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then is the convenience through FOF, that is in case of liquidity needs. Through FOF, it's the AMC who is buying back the units through RTA, right? So based on the NAV, and NAV is for the day. NAV is for the day, right? So for the day is you are doing away with the, during the day, every minute, every second kind of a volatility. You're doing away with that. So you are locking your NAV for the end of the day. Right. So that's an added advantage which comes upon to a FOF investor.
Right.
And again is in case of liquidity through ETF. I don't have to say that ETF is a bad option. It's a sin. Right. It's there for a different category of investors altogether. Whereas the ticket sizes are, the investor has long holding periods. Right. Generally what is seen is that there is a liquidity discount on ETF when one wants to sell. Right, so it's the liquidity provider or the market maker is may charge upon a hefty discount to liquidity needs, right? And that wait for liquidity can be long. See, there can be is mismatch between the offering and the buying price, so the deal may not get stuck, right? But through fund of funds, you are done away with all these hiccups.
Right. So thank you, Viksit-ji, for your inputs. So that brings me to the last question, which I will ask Shrikant-ji. All the silver fund of funds currently open, they have all begun their careers at almost the same time. So there is clearly no past track record that any fund currently has, because just recently SEBI announced the framework. So what data point does an investor take into account to choose, the silver fund of fund? Whether I should invest in XYZ fund or ABC fund, how does one decide that?
So suppose say when the T20 was first started, there was a doubtful कि किसको captain बनाए, test का captain को बनाए या ODI को captain बनाए. So obviously the answer came to ODI person because he is more related to T20. Exactly the same way, when it comes to a new set of category of funds that is coming, the silver FOF, you need to understand कि gold में सबसे पहले कौन आया था, and gold में सबसे ज़्यादा कौन है, who is the most experienced one, who is having the most knowledgeable. So obviously that's the fund house which we are as a part of now today. That's the Nippon one, which earlier was Reliance. So I would prefer to go to a person who has been there, done that, and who knows how to manage money. And for me, a fund house, especially when it comes to a fund of fund, I want a fund house who uses my entire 100 rupees. I don't want a fund house who uses cash call, uska khud ka dimag chalayega, try to make more money and ultimately do something wrong. So I don't want to do that. So I have seen that Nippon, I should not be taking the name, but I have seen that Nippon has been one which has been true to its book. So I will go with the fund house which has been there, which I know that I have trusted with earlier with the gold fund, and they have done a very good job. And for silver also, I will go with the same thing. So that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Shrikantji. So clearly, the gold, data point is important for choosing the right silver FOF. So thank you, gentlemen, a lot. With this, we come to an end of a wonderful session. I think key takeaways from this session is that the electronic form of investing is the more efficient form of investing. As you are assured of the purity, you don't have to worry about storage of the physical metal that's taken care by the custodian. Silver is a very important building block because of its industrial usage, especially the new use in 5G, solar power, etc., which we all discussed, and there were a lot of statistics on that. One can clearly start investing with a very small amount and also follow the SIP route to investing. And last but not the least, because the metal has a low correlation to equities, it is a great portfolio building block and can be combined in asset allocation. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for taking time off your busy schedules and coming to this program. I think investors will be equipped to take the right decision, and I'm sure they will surely invest in the silver fund of fund. Thank you so much.
So Samir, I personally feel that silver was till now seen as a tactical allocation rather than strategic allocation. But now the times are changing. So if you remember, aluminum was actually costlier than gold. 200 years back, aluminum was costlier than gold. Then people came to understand more usage of gold in different things, and that's why gold shot up. You never know. Silver could be watched at the same time. Same thing. You never know. Silver could become के आगे जाके people will tell, instead of selling golden chance, they may tell, instead of selling golden opportunity, they may tell silver chance, silver opportunity. It could become like that. So because what I am seeing is past 2-3 years, silver supply is at 8%, but the demand is growing at 15%. So if that's the case, obviously silver has to go up. So instead of looking at it as a tactical allocation, I think it's now time to move towards looking at silver as a strategic allocation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Shrikant. Reminds me of that famous proverb: "If silence is golden, then speech is silver." So I think with that we end this wonderful session. Thank you all so much for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.